Well, good morning and welcome everyone to Good Shepherd Catholic's Mercy and Justice Communities, Core Communities Symposium on Reentry, Coming Home, Life in Tallahassee After Incarceration. We are so glad that you're able to be with us this morning. I am Suzanne Prenti, the coordinator of the Mercy and Justice Core Community, and with me are Father Michael Foley, pastor at Good Shepherd, and Olivia Hitchcock, who will be our moderator today. Our program this morning will include Catherine Nichols' personal story of reentry. Our keynote speaker, Sheriff Walt McNeil, will tell us why our efforts to assist the formerly incarcerated are so important. Patrick Mahoney will share what the Florida Department of Corrections is currently doing to assist reentering citizens. And a panel of locally involved experts will recommend ways in which we can truly welcome these brothers and sisters into the Leon County community. And we invite you, the listening audience, to enter your questions into the chat so that you can be involved in the conversation. And now, Father Foley will say a few words and lead us in prayer.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to second what Suzanne is saying and thank you for this wonderful effort to her and to her core ministry helping us to reach out to the larger community. I think it's very important for us to be a player in the bigger field of society, and I think welcoming our brothers and sisters back into the community is a wonderful opportunity. So I want to say thank you to Suzanne and to all who are making this possible, to all who are part of the panel, and to all of you who are joining this live stream. Thank you. We appreciate the effort you are making and joining us in this ministry. Let us pray. Father, we praise you. We thank you for the gift of our lives, for all the ways you bless us, for all the opportunities you provide for us to reach out to our brothers and sisters. Your word tells us that we are our brother's keeper. Help us, Lord, to fulfill, that commission, that ministry that you have given to us, and especially to our brothers and sisters who are trying to come back into society and make a life again, which can be so challenging and so difficult. Help us, Lord, to help them find their way, to find the resources, to direct them on the path that will have the greatest probability of them finding success. We know, Lord, that it can be challenging for them, and help us, Lord, to be there for them. Thank you, Lord, for this opportunity today to explore all the options that there might be, and maybe to find other options that we haven't yet thought about. We praise you, Lord. We thank you. We ask you to bless us. Bless this live stream effort and bless all who are involved in this ministry and especially in the ministry to our brothers and sisters who are incarcerated and those coming back into society. We offer your prayers. We ask all of your blessings through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Amen. And thank you very much, Father Mike. And now let me introduce our moderator, Olivia Hitchcock. Olivia is currently working on master's degrees in both social work and criminology, while interning at Good News Outreach's Mercy House, which is a residential program for formerly incarcerated men with a history of substance abuse. And she also works as a research technician at the Institute for Justice, Research, and Development. She also has a background in journalism, is very persistent, and with all that, will ask very perceptive questions, I am sure. So now I'm very pleased to hand over the program to Olivia Hitchcock.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. I appreciate it. So good morning, and thank you all so much for joining us. As Suzanne mentioned, I have the immense pleasure and privilege of working with the residents of Mercy House. I told them about this symposium a few weeks ago as we were sitting around the picnic table after dinner, and I asked them, what do you want the community to know about reentry? And they mentioned the challenges of finding employment and housing, the difficulty of obtaining IDs, which I can attest to, as well as how hard it can be to navigate the healthcare systems. But the overall sentiment was simpler. We just did bad things. We are not terrible people. And I can attest, they are in fact a lot of things. They are brilliant, funny, caring, hardworking, spiritual. They, in fact, are not terrible. They are our friends, our family, our neighbors. So let us treat them as such. Today, we will hear from some of the people at the front lines of altering what life after incarceration looks like in Tallahassee. They will share both why we bother and how we can help. And we will begin with a personal story of reentry. So Mrs. Catherine Nichols, she is a mother, a wife, and a GM at a restaurant. But for 5 years, she was known as inmate N14251. Mrs. Nichols, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
Can you hear me? Thank you for having me.
Yes, no,
Oh, okay.
thank you. And Mrs. Nichols, go ahead. We are so excited to hear your story about the before, the during, and the after incarceration.
Okay. Well, like most people's story, before anything ever happened, I was a good person. I went to school, made good grades, made good choices, and one day I backslid, and which caused a ripple effect of a lot of things. During which led me to go to jail several times. The last time that I was arrested was February 17th, 2013. And that was my life-changing moment right there. I was sentenced to 5 years in prison for the things that I did. And once I was transferred to DOC, reality set in. I had to take ownership of my actions before I could even begin to make changes to myself. And I tried to write as much as I could to the people that I thought that were there to help, and got no response. And it took me forever and a day to get responses back from, the DOC, case management, and all of that. And it was hard because in a female prison, there wasn't a lot of room in classrooms for stuff. We were limited. And being limited meant only if you were selected. So the ones that weren't selected were just basically, out of luck. And I finally got transferred to another facility, and everything that they told me that I could not do at the other one, I was told there that I could do, which was being pre-work release at the time, which they no longer have that. But that is what saved my life. Going to pre-work release was basically a inpatient drug rehab facility. And that is where I reached my changing point. I had my Bible that my papa gave to me prior to me being sent to prison. And with that and the knowledge that I was receiving from pre-work release to get my mind back to where it needed to be, essentially brought me closer to Jesus Christ and opened my heart to a lot of things that I never thought that I would be open to again. And once I left pre-work release, I was eligible for work release, and I got to stay for 14 months. Most people only get 6 to 7 months, and I was actually able to come home with money and go to the Good Samaritan, and without them, I don't even know what I would do, because I would be so lost right now. They helped me have a place to live. They showed me how to get doctor's appointments and all of that information. And not having them with a structured and organized program, I don't even know where I would be right now, because that is what saved me after I came home. Because you have a lot of judgmental people in the world, and they don't like forgiveness, and they just want to continue to judge people for prior actions, even though they are not that person anymore. And it's hard to find help. And in Tallahassee, there are not very many women transition homes. And I think that's one of the main problems is the, women's transition homes not being available. There's plenty of for men, but not for women, especially women that have, children and etc. So I think that with the community, what I would like to see is more women's transitional houses, maybe better job training or anything like that while still in prison, given more chances to learn different trades, and as opposed to only selecting 20 people for however long and then nobody else getting a chance. And that's what really, I don't want to say that. And that's the real downfall in the prison system, is because there's not enough space. There's, for everybody to get the educational values to help them become a better person when they leave. And it's not just the fact that being a better person when you leave, you have to want to be a better person as well. And with all of that together, anybody can succeed. Because when I came home, I thought that it was going to be so hard for me to find employment and everything. And the job that I have right now, I was upfront with my boss about everything. And I told him I started at the bottom and I've worked my way up to managing the entire restaurant. And that's been one of my lifelong dreams, because one of my passions is cooking. And while I was in pre-work release, I was able to obtain my manager serve safe, and it's helped me and it's been very beneficial. And having stuff like that will help people that's incarcerated come out to have something, because the people that don't get to go to work release come out with nothing and nowhere to go. So what does that lead them to do? It leads them to fall back into addiction or being homeless, to where they have to steal to get food. And then that brings them right back to jail and right back to prison. So it's a revolving cycle. And I think that's all I have. Yes.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I really
You're welcome.
appreciate you
No
sharing
problem.
your story. And you had mentioned, how much the pre-work release really was such a benefit to you. Can you talk to us a little bit more about what you were doing during that?
Yes. I spent, I want to say 11 months there, and it was in Bradenton, Florida. What we did is we had classes every single day. For critical thinking, we had, which we also called stinking thinking. We had money management. We had group sessions. We had counselor sessions. And in between that, like we also had like a little bit of rec time, time to read books. We have a library available. And we basically had everything that anybody can use at their fingertips to help themselves get better. And I took advantage of everything that I could take advantage of there, because I, at that point, knew that my life needed to change, and that was the only way it was going to happen. And when I tell you, it was so sad, because I was one of the last groups in pre-work release, and they were voting on whether or not they were going to take it away or keep it while I was there. And we got to keep it up until right after I left. which it's sad for the people that don't get to experience that, because when you're behind the fence, you don't get as much help with the drug rehabilitation part, and you don't get counseling like that. And that was more personable, and it was an extreme benefit for myself and for my family, because I got to actually come home, and I'm still sober. February 17th, 2013 is my sober date. So that's been 7 years now that I've been sober. And next month will be 3 years that I've been home from prison. And I have met and exceeded every goal that I set for myself whenever I came home. And it took a lot, and it took a lot of pushing, and it took a lot of effort. And, you know, the biggest challenge was being reunited with family. And nobody tells you how to do that, because it's all different. And my biggest challenge was being reunited with my son. I'll start crying that. My bad choices led to me leaving him for the amount of time that I left while I was in prison. And it wasn't fair to him. And since then, and since I was in pre-work release, I have tried to do everything possible that I can do to remain sober. And I try to talk to people that I know that's in addiction to help point them in the right direction and teach them things that I learned while I was in pre-work release, to hopefully help somebody one day and save somebody's life.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I mean, you're an inspiration to all of us, and I'm sure to your son as well. It speaks volumes what you're doing. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Awesome. So now we will hear from our keynote speaker. I have the honor of introducing Leon County Sheriff Walter McNeil, who has been at the helm of Florida's efforts at reimagining reentry. I could list the many accolades that the sheriff has earned during his decades in law enforcement. But I think it's fair to say that his character and his heart for his work speak so much more than all of those accolades. So thank you so much, Sheriff, for being here with us today.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you, and thank Good Shepherd for putting on this forum and having this discussion. I am extremely buoyed up hearing Ms. Nichols. Thank you for your testimony about the trials and tribulations that you've experienced. And let me say, first and foremost, and I know this isn't a global discussion, but I must address this from a global perspective, and that is that we are the greatest country in the world. And we often speak of to ourselves in that way. And I've had the opportunity to travel across the country, also across in several international places. And I've had the opportunity to visit prisons in those places. And I will tell you that there are several countries outside of the United States that are far ahead of us with respect to how they deal with and treat those persons who are incarcerated, and formerly incarcerated persons coming back to their communities. So we have to do a better job. And so the question here this morning, my part of this was, why bother? And I think Ms. Nichols, her conversation with us this morning speaks volumes of why we must in fact bother. There are people being impacted by decisions that we make relative to how we deal with formerly incarcerated persons. In American prisons, more than 1.5 million individuals are imprisoned, and that's a 390% increase in terms of people imprisoned in the United States since 1978. A 390% increase in the number of persons who are imprisoned in our country. There are over 600,000 men and women released from prison, from state and federal prisons every year. 600,000 persons. And they have a similar story to that one just told by Ms. Nichols. So why bother? I will tell you that, one, it is in fact in all of our best interests to be engaged and have those conversations about what's taking place in our prison systems so that we can in fact be more effective in putting those programs and assistance programs together for those people in our community. I think Ms. Nichols' conversation with us speaks volumes with respect to this. She spoke of coming into the institution and there were programs that were in place. And somehow, some persons made a decision to take away those programs. She was very lucky in that at the very outset, when she was coming back to our community, she was able to take advantage of the reentry efforts that were being placed in the Department of Corrections here in the state of Florida. I will tell you that my experience has been, and I have to tell you these stories here. I'll start with the reason I became the Secretary of the Department of Corrections. In fact, it was not a job that I really wanted to have. Governor Charlie Crist at the time indicated to me that he needed someone to go in and make some significant changes in the way that we went about dealing with persons who are incarcerated. Hearing the discussion with the governor, reluctantly, extremely reluctantly, I took on that responsibility. And I found that we weren't doing anything, at least from my perspective, to get people in a better position to come back into our communities. We were simply sending people to prison, warehousing those persons, and then expecting that they return back to our community and not be engaged in crime. And that was an absolute failure and an absolute miscarriage of our criminal justice system. Our criminal justice system speaks to justice, and what we were doing in our prison systems was far from being anything like justice. So what we did initially was to establish a reentry effort, a bona fide reentry effort to try to address the problems and needs of our inmates. I'll give you one example from the inside, and then I'll give you an example from the outside as relates to persons coming back into our communities and the way we kind of interact with those. I'll never forget having the opportunity to meet with a young man who had been in prison at the age of 17. He was direct filed as a juvenile into the Department of Corrections prison system. He had spent 20 years in prison. At that time, when I got there, the first year I was there, I got the chance to interact with this young man. We were getting him ready to be released from our prison, and the young man was crying as he was getting on the bus to leave. And we asked him, "What's going on? You're going home. Why are you crying? Shouldn't you be happy?" And the young man had enough foresight and enough intuitiveness about himself to realize that he had spent the vast majority of his life in prison. And he was asking himself, what am I going back to? What the circumstances that led my being in prison are still there, and I have no place to go. He was given a suit of clothes, $100, and expected to go back into society now at the age of like 36, 37, with no skills. And so that young man saw his circumstance and cried about it and asked us actually to keep him there in our prison. Obviously, we couldn't do that. That young man did not make it. Obviously, he came back to the Florida prison system. Another example I want to share with you is from the outside. As a Secretary of the Department of Corrections, I had the opportunity to run into one of our family members of an incarcerated person. One afternoon, as I was at the Circle K, gassing up my personal car, I noticed a man seated in his truck at the pump station across from me, watching as I pumped gas. And he basically said to me, he got out, and I was very concerned about him getting out and approaching me. I could see his eyes were welling up with water, with tears. And he walked up and he said, "You're Secretary McNeil, aren't you?" And I obviously responded in the affirmative. He went on to say that his daughter had been incarcerated because she stole money as a teller in one of our local banks. And he said, before you became secretary, I was all against what you were trying to do. All this stuff you talk about reentry and giving these people a second chance, I really didn't believe in that. I didn't believe that was the best thing to do. I believe that people should go in prison and they should be locked away and kept away from society. But after my daughter's experience, when I saw that she was having difficulty getting a job, that she was having difficulty getting a driver's license, that she had a difficult time taking care of her children, that in fact, he and his wife were now the primary caretakers for the children. He said, "Sir, I want to let you know that I want to support what you're trying to do." And so the issue of why bother? Why bother is that many of us are only one horrific event away from ourselves perhaps being incarcerated. We drive vehicles down the streets every day. Some of us drink and drive. And I hope that never happens, but in those circumstances, you could find yourselves incarcerated as well. The least of these, how we treat the least of these in our nation, in our communities here in Tallahassee, Leon County, is so important. We can't see ourselves as being separate and apart from these issues. These issues impact us on a daily basis in terms of the crime that we see on our streets, in terms of the homeless persons that we see trying to find food, in terms of the homeless people that wind up in our detention facility. I will tell you, here in the Leon County Sheriff's Office, there are persons who are released from prison, who come into our community, who become homeless in our community, and they commit crimes primarily, in many instances, primarily to get the opportunity to come in, get out of the weather, have a warm place to lie down, and to get 3 meals a day. And we have a significant problem with respect to mental health in our community. The same derivative of the criminal justice system, the persons incarcerated, impacts here in respect to the mental health problems on our streets of Tallahassee. I will tell you that between 30 to 40% of the persons incarcerated here in our detention facility suffer from some level of mental health. There are something on the magnitude of 22% of the persons across the country are involved in some level of mental health problem as they exit our prison systems. Substance abuse, something like 48% of the persons in our prison systems have substance abuse problems that go unaddressed in our communities. So the question today of why bother? I will tell you that we all have a great responsibility to do what we can where we are, to see if we can change the narrative, so we can change the lives of those persons we see on the streets. I believe it's within our grasp to make significant strides to change what we know is a problem. I'm always reminded when I talk about these issues, some people say, well, what's in it for me? As a Christian, that's a question that should never be asked, but I know that those questions are pervasive. Let me say this from a biblical perspective. I'm reminded of the book of Matthew. I'm reminded of a circumstance when a man who was a paraplegic was brought to a place where Jesus was. And the crowd was so large, there were so many people there, that they could not actually get this paraplegic in front of Jesus. And they took the opportunity to climb on top of a building and to dig a hole in the roof and to lower this paraplegic person down to where Jesus could lay hands on him. And I thought it insightful what Jesus said. So if you ask why bother, I believe there's a correlation here between what Jesus said to that group of people and what he's saying to each and every one of us today. He said to the paraplegic, your sins are forgiven. And he said, their faith, the faith of those persons who went out of their way, dug a hole in a roof, lowered that person down so that he could receive the healing that he greatly needed. Their faith. It's those people of faith who have to go the extra mile, to have to be in the vineyards, as I like to call it, engaged in doing the work of the Great Commission. I think that many of us, particularly Christians, again, we have a responsibility to our communities. Why bother? Why bother? We bother because it is what we've been commissioned to do, to love one another and to address the problems here that we see in Leon County, in Tallahassee. I will tell you that in Tallahassee, Leon County, I believe we're going in the right direction. We have great momentum with respect to the various social service organizations that are working together and trying to address this problem. But it's still not enough. It's going to take us reaching out to all of our sisters and brothers in our various organizations, in our neighborhoods, in our families, to get them to understand that, as Ms. Nichols said, these are not all bad people. These are people who made some bad decisions, but they're certainly not all bad people. And but for the grace of God, there go many of us. And the story of the young man who met me at the gas pumps speaks to the fact that this can happen in any family. And I dare say that some of you listening today can attest to the fact that you perhaps have had loved ones that have gone to jail, perhaps not to prison, but it's going to take all of us pitching in, trying to make the difference. The evidence is clear. The evidence is clear that we can, in fact, make a difference in the lives of our fellow brothers and sisters here in Leon County by being engaged in trying to get assistance through Homeless Coalition. It's been proven that if we can stand up a mental health system that begins with the person who's incarcerated here in our detention facility and enable that person to go through our portal of reentry, that we're going to have better outcomes. It's been proven that if we can have interventions with respect to persons who are on drugs or have drug addictions, that we can actually get those persons off those drugs and become vibrant, contributing members of our community. And that is the challenge that we have here in Leon County. I believe it's in our reach. I believe it's part of our responsibility. And I look forward to working with each and every one of you to make sure that the Leon County Sheriff's Office, the number of persons we have with mental health problems, some 30 to 40%, that our goal is to reduce that number in the next 5 years to something close to 10%. I believe that the persons in our community who are homeless, who wind up in our detention facilities, I believe that we can start to address those problems if we work together and keep those persons out of our jails and out of our prisons. But it's going to take a concerted effort, a belief by all of us that we are all in this together. And as we say, as I close in the Leon County Sheriff's Office, we are all committed to doing everything we can. And what I say to our staff and our employees here, I ask them to lead at their level, to do what they can where they are. We're not asking anybody to stretch beyond their means, but simply all be engaged in trying to do what we can to serve our citizens and to serve our brothers and sisters. God bless you. And as we said in the Leon County Sheriff's Office, we are all in.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sheriff. I really appreciate it. And in the final kind of seconds that you have, I would like to take a moment to ask you to speak to our citizens who are returning. I can tell you when I was talking to the men that I work with at Mercy House about the symposium, and I said, you know, the keynote speaker is going to be the sheriff, and they all kind of paused and they were curious as to why the sheriff would be on a symposium about reentry. So Sheriff, if you could just briefly say some words to our citizens who are reentering. What do you want them to know?
Well, one, I want them to know that they are not alone, that I am absolutely committed to trying to address this problem. As I said in some of my remarks previously, I know firsthand, I've got family members who have been incarcerated, and I know full hand the challenges that they faced. I've seen those family members go through the iteration of trying to get those jobs. And it is laid on my heart. I certainly believe that nothing happens by chance. I believe that I was placed in the Department of Corrections where I did not want to go. I could continue to say that. I was placed there for a reason. And now it is the one burning passion that I have. I am absolutely passionate about trying to address this problem. And I said at the outset, Olivia, that we are United States of America. We can do better. We must do better. We must do a better job of showing the citizens of our community that everyone here, every American, every citizen of Leon County has value, and we love them. And so I'm committed to that love of my brothers and sisters here in Leon County, of all stripes, of all backgrounds, and of all circumstances.
Well, thank you for doing better for the citizens of Leon County. As a citizen, I thank you. As someone involved in reentry, I thank you as well. So thank you again for being here today, Sheriff.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. My pleasure.
Awesome. So we will now hear from Mr. Patrick Mahoney, who is the Director of the Office of Programs and Reentry at the Florida Department of Corrections. Mr. Mahoney, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you to Good Shepherd Church for Catholic Church for putting on this great event this morning. As Olivia mentioned, I'm Patrick Mahoney. I'm the statewide director for programs and reentry for the Florida Department of Corrections. I've been with the Florida Department of Corrections since 1994. So as Sheriff McNeil mentioned that I think he mentioned several times that he did not want to be part of the Department of Corrections. I guess it says something for me for being there for almost 27 years now. Maybe good or bad. I'm not quite sure how to respond to that. But I did work for Sheriff McNeil when he was Secretary of the Department of Corrections, and very, very proud to work for him and proud of what he accomplished when he was secretary there. He did really push the agency towards programs and reentry. As director of the Office of Programs and Reentry, I'm responsible for statewide policy driven activities in terms of academic education, career and technical education, chaplaincy services, substance use treatment, special education, library services, all on the inmate side, institutional side, and contracted programs for our probation and parole offenders as well, and also in terms of our reentry components for the agency. This morning, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the new initiative called the Florida Foundation for Correctional Excellence. I can probably speak all day in terms of all the good things we do within the Department of Corrections. But like Catherine mentioned earlier in her story, we don't have enough. Our scalability isn't there, which I believe is we're working towards. We do great things within the Department of Corrections, but the resources are just not there for the 80,000 or so inmates in our system. We're about 80,000 right now. Prior to COVID, we were above 90,000. So, but we're going to see that those numbers increase as the court systems open up. Like I said, I can speak all day on the really good things we do within the agency, our short sentence correctional institutions, our incentivized prisons where we're incentivizing good behavior, our mentoring programs, our peer-to-peer programs, our reentry centers, and really at the forefront is our programming response during the pandemic, which we, as you know, we had to restrict visitation and our volunteers from coming back in, and also adjust our programming schedules during the pandemic. But our response to it on a programming side and our dedication of our programming staff statewide was astounding. So I'm really proud to be part of that effort. But this morning I'm going to be speaking on the Florida Foundation for Correctional Excellence. Last February of 2020, just prior to the pandemic, Governor DeSantis announced in Jacksonville the creation of the Florida Foundation for Correctional Excellence, which is a direct support organization tied to the Department of Corrections. Direct support organizations are permitted under Florida statute. They're nonprofit, completely separate from the agency, but they work towards a specific mission that supports the agency. And the mission of the foundation is to bridge the gap between community resources and reentry needs by connecting private and public partners, thereby increasing investment in public correctional reentry and workforce training programs, supporting public safety and healthy Florida communities. We're in the infancy. As I mentioned, the governor announced the creation of it in Jacksonville in February of 2020. Then the pandemic hit, so we were a very slow beginning creating it. So we're still in the infancy stage. We have 7 board members from diverse areas of the state. 1 person from out of state as a board member. So we're still creating it. We're going to be working alongside private partners to bring them along to help us in terms of programs and reentry resources. So if anyone's interested in joining us in that effort, you can contact me, and we'll help move this foundation along a little more. There are another really decent effort that was a success last legislative session was the reinstitution of the Inmate Welfare Trust Fund. The Inmate Welfare Trust Fund is resources through canteen and proceeds from canteen sales and telephone sales. So some of those proceeds go back to the Inmate Welfare Trust Fund to help the agency support and expand reentry and programming for the inmate population. And we're really proud about that. We lost the ability to use those inmate welfare trust funds over 17 years ago, and so it was a priority of the agency last legislative session to reinstitute that program. So we got it back into statute, and along with it, about $2.5 million each year will be put into the Inmate Welfare Trust Fund, where we can utilize those funds to support our programming and reentry efforts. I know I have I can speak all day on all the good things we do, but my time is only about 10 minutes. So so if there's any questions afterwards, you can always contact me. I'm available, and I'd love to hear from you all at a later date. One last thing I'd like to mention is I know we probably have a lot of Department of Corrections volunteers listening in, and the Department of Corrections is open for for business, for your services. We'd love to have you back inside of our institutions, providing the great work you all do. We couldn't do half of what we wanted to do without the dedication of our volunteer networks. So again, contact me. We're open. We'd love to have you back in. And I want to thank the Good Shepherd Catholic Church for inviting me this morning. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Director Mahoney. It's really refreshing to hear what the Department of Corrections is doing to make this transition easier. So thank you again for your insight. And I think I speak for everyone when we say we'll be following the work that you're doing. So thank you.
And I look forward to being followed.
Thank you. Awesome. So next, we will turn to a panel discussion on how our community can help. So we will hear from Father Dustin Fedden, a priest in the Diocese of Pensacola, Tallahassee, who is the founder and executive director of the transitional housing program, Joseph House. We also have 3 individuals who have experienced reentry firsthand. We have Mr. Rob Hawkins, a former lifetime parolee, a paralegal, and a chaplain and minister. We have Ms. Frida King, who is a program director at Disc Village's Jail Reentry Network, and someone I work very closely with, Mr. Dale White, who is a program director of Mercy House, founder of the Living Harvest, and CEO of Reentry Solutions Network. We will also hear from Dr. Karenza Lockwood, who is the Director of Implementation and Administration at the Institute of Justice Research and Development at Florida State University. We also have Mr. Steve Harrelson, who is the Assistant Sheriff for the Department of Detention, Judicial, and Reentry with the Leon County Sheriff's Office. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. Now, Assistant Sheriff, we're going to begin with you. Can you tell us a little bit more? What does successful reentry look like from a law enforcement perspective?
Well, it is not knowledge that we have to take over. I mean, the old line of thinking of locking someone up and throwing away the key is an old concept that just obviously doesn't work. So for us as law enforcement and in detention, reentry is a new tool that we can use to kind of change the outcome of somebody when they are arrested. It's not just a matter of putting them back out on the streets and just forgetting about them. It's the minute they walk in the door, our whole mindset is about reentry. Every single person at the detention facility of the Leon County Sheriff's Office is all about having somebody come in and making them better when they get out so they are successful and lead to a very productive life out on the streets.
All right, thank you so much. Now, Dr. Lockwood, the Institute for Justice Research and Development is in the process of testing a data-driven reentry service approach. It's called the 5-Key Model for Reentry. So can you tell us some more about the model and as well as what the results are saying? What are you seeing? Is it working?
Yes, I'm so excited to share this with you today. In May of 2018, IJRD launched its flagship project, which is a multi-state, multi-site randomized controlled trial of the 5-Key Model for Reentry. It was designed to produce actionable data to improve individuals' stability re-entering the community. Since May of 2018, we have enrolled almost 2,400 individuals formerly incarcerated into the study across 7 states and almost 100 different correctional facilities. Half of the individuals were assigned to the treatment group, which is the group that will receive the 5-Key Model for Reentry, which actually includes talking about healthy thinking patterns, positive relationships, positive social engagement, meaningful work trajectories, also effective coping strategies. The other half of the group was actually enrolled into what we would consider the treatment as usual, what services are available to those individuals as they're transitioning back into the community. And it is a standardized, manualized approach to reentry, and it's based on the assumption that when we are able to promote human potential, as a core focus, we can actually reduce reincarceration. We have actually found this. And this is really important given the dramatic findings that the most recent national report on recidivism actually has just recently come out with. And they said that about 5 out of 6 of those individuals released from state prison are rearrested within a 9-year period. And this new approach, paired with the policy reforms, is critically needed. I won't go into too much detail, but I'll give you 2 really exciting information about the results that we received out of this preliminary data that we're crunching. And then I will refer you to our quarterly reports. We are transparent with all of our information and all the feedback. And what we can, there you can find the very short 6-page report, but it will go into more detail of all of the great research that is coming out of this study. But I will leave you with this. At both 8 and 15 months after release from incarceration, fewer people assigned to the 5-key model group reported an reincarceration event than those in the comparison group. Among participants assigned to the 5-key model for reentry, they had higher levels of reported well-being on each of the 5 keys and was associated with reduced likelihood of reincarceration. And I want to just make sure that we're all on the same page when we're talking about well-being. We define well-being as a state of satisfying and productive engagement with one's life and the realization that one's full potential is psychological, social, and occupational is the core focus. It's more about what the individual wants to get out of their life versus us going and saying, well, it's very important. We all know the barriers to reentry are there, but we are focusing on the individual's needs and desires and where they want to go with their lives. And so I will leave you with that and encourage you to please go to the Institute for Justice Research and Development's website. We have several quarterly reports that summarize the great work that's happening and the actionable research that is actually being used in policy through the Safe Streets and Second Chances Initiative, which is a federal initiative through the Right on Crime partners that we have. In addition, we have several training events that also can be used in the community partners. If anybody has any other questions, please feel free to give me a call. I'm always there, as Olivia can attest to. And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to present these great preliminary results about the 5-key model for reentry.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lockwood. And before I turn to Mr. White, I'm going to ask you just briefly, could you tell us a little bit more about what the treatment looks like? You mentioned, we're focusing on well-being, but how are we doing that?
Right. So it's a really good question. Through years of experience with Dr. Pettis Davis, who is the founder and executive director of the Institute, we start actually with the individual while they're still incarcerated. We are engaging with them pre-release. We are talking to them about what they can expect if they are in the project. The individuals who are assigned to the 5-key model will start to receive services pre-release. And this is really starting to prime them for things that we're going to talk about. Who are their primary contacts in the community? How do we find you if you don't show up to an appointment? And those kind of things. Once the individual is released, we do try to get in contact with them almost immediately and start to work the program and move through the 5 keys. This is based on what they tell us is their needs and desires. It's not us checking off a box. It's what's going on with the individual at that moment. And it may be the fact that they're sleeping on their sister's couch and the sister just doesn't understand why he, can't get a job and he's been out a week. And so we try to work through that and try to talk through with the individual about their needs and how they might be able to address those concerns that are being brought up in their family. So those are just like a real high overview of a little what goes through. And we stay with the individuals we're staying with the individuals almost a year that we're contacted, 12 to 15 months time frame with the individual. And we are constantly, we get phone calls from them. I got a job, and we're like, yay, and then, we'll get, our interventionists who are trained to deliver the treatment model. We get great feedback from our participants. As a matter of fact, we have several of our quarterly reports that actually focus on what the individual is saying to us and telling us. And matter of fact, I had a quote that I wanted to share with you guys. The question was like, what could community members do to help individuals who are returning, right, back into the community? And one of our participants actually said, provide a listening ear, offer a path, help to surround people with positive support, and to recognize that many people who have been in prison want to give back. And that's a direct quote from one of our participants who's part of the project.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'll plug the most recent quarterly report. It brought tears to my eyes reading the stories of these individuals who have been a part of the 5 Key treatment program. So I would encourage you all to check it out. Now, Mr. White, you were a part of the community advisory board that helped define those 5 key aspects of well-being development. So how can the community play a role in bolstering those different aspects of well-being for individuals who are releasing from incarceration?
Yes, and good morning, everybody. And what a great privilege to be here with this awesome panel. And I really enjoyed the speakers that came previously. And when I was listening to Ms. Nichols, I was thinking back to my days when I was incarcerated and what we had available in the way of programs inside to pick up where Dr. Lockwood left off of going and working with people before they're released. And the more and more after doing this work for over 10 years, the results that we get when we work with people before they're released, and able to continue with them afterwards, the outcomes are so much better because we've got a captive audience, if you will, and they're looking for something to do. A lot of the worst time in prison is the worst thing that can happen is not have anything to do with your time. So if we can utilize using that time inside to help them get up to speed a little bit before they're released, because that release is really a difficult transition, which most people don't understand. And the trauma that goes along with, number one, being incarcerated, most of us have been traumatized before the incarceration. We're traumatized some more with the incarceration. And then the worst traumatization we experience sometimes is being released with not having a clue or having the resources or having all the barriers that we have to overcome to make it on the outside. And that's why we fail so much at reentry over the last 20 years. I really, at Mercy House now with Good News Outreach, we're really working closely with Institute for Justice Research and Development and with the Department of Corrections on their incentivized prisons and some other things so that we can actually implement some of the 5 key model into what we're doing now, which comes from a different point, a strength-based approach of addressing well-being first and providing the resources that are necessary to help create well-being that Dr. Lockwood defined when she was talking. That's a really important thing that all of the community can be involved in. And this is where the community can really step up. You know, to have a friend when somebody's released, whether it be a mentor or a faith-based church that has volunteers available to come in and pick our men up and take them to church, or to transport them to doctor's appointments and probation and, you know, all of the other things, job interviews, or even in some cases, transportation is a big issue because our bus system in Leon County doesn't actually get the people that we have to work when they need to be there, because they start sometimes earlier than the buses run, or they go to work where the buses don't run. So fitting that in through our volunteers coming out of the community, because the transportation issue is so big, is one way where a volunteer could actually mentor that person while they're taking him to an appointment or taking him to work or to church or whatever. I find that when I'm working with our men, it's some of the best time to have those conversations with them. When they're more relaxed, it's kind of a friendship type situation where they can actually help to put them at ease, walk them through it, and they need somebody to walk them through that. That kind of stuff is very stressful for them. Other areas where the community can really help is in helping lead Christian and spiritual study that can actually get them involved to grow in their faith. That's something that the faith-based community especially can do better than the rest of us sometimes, because they are working from, that's their gift, that's their strength. And when they can mentor the people that we are working with on a one-on-one basis, or even in a group situation, or even just by bringing them into their church and making them a part of, is a huge lift, and what brings these men and women another opportunity to experience the well-being that they need to experience.
Thank you.
The faith-based community actually is a great gift that we can all take advantage of when it comes to helping to build the well-being in these ladies and gentlemen that are returning home. They want to be a part of. In other words, the stigma that goes along with being released and carrying a felony record and a convicted felon status and all of those things, they've made some bad choices that got them there, but that's really not who they are. They just want to be a part of the community and not looked at from their background, but from where they're going forward. And to include them in the things that we do in our community, whether it's inviting them to a church picnic or other church functions or things that are going on in the community, whether they just, a group of people get together and go play softball or bowling or something. To be included in those kinds of things that help create more inclusion into the community is a huge thing that helps create that well-being that we're talking about. So I think maybe my time's about up, but it's great work that everybody's doing here. And I know that everybody is trying to bring the resources to have a bigger impact on this problem. And I think the Leon County community is really stretching, and I'm certainly grateful to Good Shepherd for putting on this event and for all of the people that are joining us here today. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, Father, like Mr. White, you see the day-to-day experiences of recently released individuals with your work over at Joseph House. So in your experience, what has the community response been both to your program and to your residents?
Yeah, well, thanks, Olivia and Good Shepherd for inviting all of us to participate on this important topic and challenge in our community. So I'll just say over the past 2 years, I've been, it's overwhelming at times to see how people have responded at an individual level. We have a lot of volunteers that come from different, demographics, different ages, that are willing to sit and have meals with our men here at Joseph House, that are willing to take them to the opera, to baseball games in safe ways. We accompany. We believe very strongly in accompaniment. That we have a responsibility to extend our hands to our returning neighbors back into the community, and to create safe opportunities for relationships to develop. And so we have elderly volunteers that come and read, do book clubs with the guys. We have college students, Florida State organizations that come out and help us with our landscaping and planting and get to know the guys in the process. And so in that way, I mean, it's beyond what I ever imagined in terms of the response from individuals and churches and organizations in joining us with this experience, really, of that we believe is restorative and frankly healing in a lot of ways too, to create those safe spaces for people to be able to have that intangible sense of belonging, which to me is very key. And that's only what community can do. I think more so than jobs, more so than anything else, that sense of belonging and having a people that you belong to is essential in reintegration, especially for, the guys that we kind of focus on. People that we focus on are people that are going to be qualified as homeless, would be designated as homeless upon their release. And so very much in need of community and relationship and family, a kind of family environment. And so we've, I have to say it has been overwhelming to see the response of safe neighbors in our community, safe citizens in the Tallahassee area extend a hand of out to those that are returning and help us in creating a place of belonging for the guys, for those that are coming to Joseph House. And so it's been a beautiful experience.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's wonderful to hear. Now, as several of our panelists have discussed, reentry starts while you're still incarcerated. This is not something that starts when you are released. So with that, Ms. King, can you tell us some more about the work that you do with individuals while they are still incarcerated?
Yes, good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. Thank you. Some of my colleagues that I work with, Father Dustin and Dale, good to see you. First, I want to just chime in what Dale was saying, having that lived experience, me being on the opposite side of living 25 years of criminal lifestyle, addiction, trauma, has really helped place me in a position to really understand what our men and women go through from a child. So one of the things that we hone in on in pre-release case management is what happened to you versus why are you here? We want to know what's going on with you, and we build that rapport. So we had the LIFT program. It's no longer in existence for 10 years. I supervised that program and kind of revamped it for the last 7.5 years. And we really focus on trauma. I'm involved in the trauma-informed care movement, speak about it quite a bit, and wanted to focus on the trauma, on their lack, and then incorporate whatever they need into their case plan. So we don't drive the case plan. As Dr. Lockwood was saying, it's not about what we want them to have. We want to know what is it that you need. Now, if I have a client that's been on heroin for 40 years, which I have had, and I ask them, oh, well, do you want to go to treatment? No, I'm good. I may recommend strongly, right, that it may be something that you could explore. We'll go with you. We'll set up the appointment. Pre-release case management is so huge right now. And I'm so excited because 10 years ago, it really wasn't. Even 5 years ago, it wasn't as ramped up as it was when I was running the program. Very rarely did I see anybody going into prisons or jails, meeting with clients prior to their release, right? So we definitely have been a front runner in that. I'm very excited that our agency received a BJA grant, and I am charged with creating 3 programs in Wakulla County, Jefferson County, and Madison County that will have programming, and pre-release case management is a requirement. And I'm so excited about that. So we walk with them through the journey of being inside, but when they get out, we will walk with them out. So just like everybody else, it's not all of it is not done inside, but it's important for that person to have someone to walk with them. It's me and my staff. At my agency, we can't really have volunteers doing some of the things we do because of legalities and driving cars and so forth. But we take them to the probation officer. We meet with the probation officer. We go to the doctor with them. Some of them are, not highly educated, so they may not know how to ask about, can I get a blood panel so I can check my cholesterol? So we're there every step of the way. I think someone mentioned, Dr. Lockwood, correct me if I'm wrong, about a family member, someone sleeping on the couch, and the sister's like, what you doing, buddy, right? Well, we even go further because we talk to the family prior to release. prior to them getting out, I would talk to everybody and their mama so they'll know what we're doing to help assist them, meaning the family, the partner, whoever is involved, that we're there to assist them in making them whole, which means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So another thing that I think is important to mention, we have so many different transitional programs in Tallahassee. We don't really have enough, but I'm really excited about this opportunity to work in these 3 rural counties because they have nothing, right? Dale has been great. Even before the program started, a lieutenant asked me, "Hey, Frida, someone's getting out. Can you help me?" And Dale is great. And he met with him and scooped him up. And last I heard, he's doing well. Is he still doing well, Dale? Oh, Dale's muted. Okay. Nod your head. Yes, he's still doing well. I want good return, right?
He's doing well.
Yes. So, and that was in December, and just a phone call, and he has a job. One of the things that I know Father Dustin and I kind of bounce back and forth with is the amount of time that people have to really get it together. Okay. When you look at someone that has been in prison for 10 years, right? And you have them go to a program, and all programs vary. Some have 30 days, some have 60 days. It's very, very difficult to try to get someone to be in a well-being state in 30 days or 45 days to get out and get on the horse and let's get running. That's very unrealistic because that's not going to take enough time for that person to decompress. I'm home in a home with men I don't know. I got to get used to people that I don't know. And now the extra pressure of finding work is another added stress. So my hope is that a lot of programs can get more money. So that way the residents, the participants, the clients can have time to get a bearing. And that is one of the great things that I love about Father Dustin's program is that because it's private and he has a lot of money. I'm just kidding. No, he doesn't. But the way they do it, that they have enough time, like even 9 months, so they can get the counseling, they can get the treatment. They don't have to worry about finding a job to pay whatever the daily rate is. And I understand people have to run their business, but that's the thing that I think we really, really need to start looking at is how long can an individual be in a program without the added stress? Because they already have to go to probation. They have to go to mental health counseling. They may have to go to the substance abuse treatment. Then they're trying to get back with their wife or their sister. They're trying to restore a relationship with a family. I just said all that in one breath and I'm tired. So imagine someone that's been in prison for 10 years, 5 years, having to get out and face those barriers. And that is something that we need to look at on how to be able to get funding for a Mercy House, for a Living Harvest, for programs that are great programs. But because they don't have enough money, right, to be able to have somebody to be there 6 months without a job, that's not their fault. It's just the way the system works. And one last thing, I know, Olivia, when I did a little training with you all, you asked me a specific question. And that was something like, well, when do you stop holding someone's hand, right? You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
So you stop holding someone's hand when they're able to let go of your hand. So there's no certain time that we should be saying, again, in your opinion, not your opinion, Olivia, I mean a person's opinion, you should be ready to go. I implore anybody that wants to go to prison for 10 years, which I know you don't, and then you go to a transitional program and see how it work out for you. It's not going to work out well. Okay. So we have to focus on that family restoration, trauma, like digging deep. You can go to work and you're still broken. We want sustainability in employment. We don't want our clients to just get a job. We want them to stay on a job, grow on a job, get into the 401k, save their money, get their driver's license back. All of that's a part of well-being, restore their family, get married, go to the beach. All of that is a family unit. That's not going to happen at a minimum wage job, and they have to pay where they have to stay, and they have to buy some deodorant. It's just very, very unrealistic.
Awesome. Thank you, Ms. King. And I can tell you, as the intern case manager over at Mercy House, you are an inspiration. I now go over to doctor's appointments with the guys because some of them haven't seen a primary care physician since they were 13. And, calling the doctor is really scary. So thank you for your insight, your wisdom, and your passion for our returning citizens. It is an inspiration. So thank you. Now, Mr. Hawkins. Yeah, Mr. Hawkins, you are a great example of somebody who has lived it and is now, as Dr. Lockwood was saying, willing to give back. You go inside and you are helping our returning citizens on the outside as well. Tell us a little bit more about the work that you do and why you do it.
Well, it starts out by giving God all the glory for everything that we accomplish. I spent over 25 years in prison and exactly 7 years on what was supposed to be lifetime parole. I've been out for 9 years now. I started going back into prisons after 2 years, ministering to my brothers and sisters in blue. And I just remembered where I came from, and I knew that I had something to share with them because of my successes through this transition process. I didn't know what was going to happen the day that I got out. That morning, I didn't know I was going home. And the next morning, I was released in a halfway house in San Francisco, or Sacramento, and after 25 years in prison with no money and nothing to go, I just had to put my faith that God, if he was going to release me, that he was going to provide for me as well. So when I go in, my first counsel to them is to become aware of, change their perspective and become aware of who they are in Christ, if that's, the direction they want to go. There's all kinds of different, types of programs that can be used, but I find that the Christ-centered plan is a much better and more successful plan than most. I have men and women in my own house that are going through transition. I've worked with the Mercy House. I went through the Mercy House. I was at the Mercy House for 14 months from March of 2013 until just about the end of 2015. During that period of time, I volunteered with Good News Outreach and became connected with the Good News Outreach Network. I also began the process of connecting with people that were in the community. And it wasn't that I was trying to go out to make those connections. It was just that the direction that my life was taking made it available to where I could meet different people. I went to Tallahassee Community College for 3 years and graduated with 2 degrees. Through that process, I met various, mentors and friends. Because I am involved, I have been involved with prison ministry. I meet different people that are involved in that through Good News Outreach and the prayer breakfast every year. I've met Walt McNeil and Lawrence Revel, both the TPD chief, as well as Walt, who we saw this morning. And those connections have opened up my sphere of ability to mentor and work with other people and see it from a different perspective as well. I think that our transition or reentry definitely has to start way before the people go to prison. It has to start at the time of arrest. One of the deep things that I believe would be one of the surest ways to get connected is to educate the community with this and try to break this us them mentality that is permeated society since the late 80s and early 90s. They lock them up and throw away the key, and then the media pumping up, crime stats. Not to say that some of these folks that are arrested don't deserve the incarceration, but we got to figure out what it is that brought them to that point. Some of them will respond, some of them won't. Restorative justice techniques have to be employed at the time of arrest and start through the prosecutorial process. The community has to be involved in decision-making process. They have to be educated to the point where they understand that, hey, it's the community's responsibility, really, because this person is a member of the community. They are coming back to the community. If they don't feel like they're connected, then they don't have any horse in the race, and they're not going to respond to anything. You can give them all the programs that they want, and if they don't feel like they're a member, then they're going to go back and do whatever it is they do. And the thing about with the media is that if these people, they hear while they're in prison, well, lock them up. We don't want to have nothing to do with them. They deserve the death penalty, or they deserve to be locked up forever. What does that do to their mentality and the way that they think about things? And so by community involvement at the time of the arrest, through the jail process, through the prosecutorial process, and into the prison and throughout the probation and parole process, those people will feel like they're connected. And it can't be just a portion of the community. The whole community has to be involved in this. And even if they appoint people to just be the point of people, but people, go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And I think something that you said that resonates for a lot of people is that us versus them mentality. So, Assistant Sheriff, I'm going to turn this one over to you. What are you doing from a law enforcement perspective to break down those barriers of us versus them?
It should be more of a concept of what we're not doing. I mean, we have done a complete 180 with everything we're doing at our detention facility and the sheriff's office as a whole. From our RISE Center that we have created, which is going to become the beacon for returning citizens, not only from our detention facility, but also from the Department of Corrections and the Federal Bureau of Prisons. So it's a location they can come in. It's going to be a partnership with other community partners through Reentry that the returning citizen can come. They don't know what they need. They don't know where to go to. The RISE Center, which stands for Reentry, Innovative Services, and Empowerment. The RISE Center becomes a spot for them to come and get the help they need, no matter what that help is. Our staff there will be able to put them on the right direction they need. Another thing we have done is the old work camp model we used to have that was created back in 1997, where we had inmates and also citizens that were outside doing community service. They would report to us, and we would do menial work for them to do in the community, digging ditches, cleaning trash out of the roadways and such as that. We completely retooled that, so that has now become Pathways. And Pathways is a whole different mindset. We look at each individual person, and we actually get into their DNA to see what we can do to put them on the right path. And everyone's going to be different. You may have somebody named Joe, and Joe's been a shade tree mechanic his entire life, has no certifications or formalized training. We have a fix for Joe. We have a 12-week program that will go through their sentencing process, and they'll actually be sentenced to the Pathways program. And what Joe will do is Joe will come over through our fleet facility with our fleet manager. He has a 12-week program put aside. Joe would report every day. He would be on-the-job training. He would get certification training, and he would also sit for his ASC license. So at the end of his sentence, he will have that training. He will have that ASC certification. And in the background, the RISE Center personnel are actually helping Joe try to find a job before he gets through with his program. Because that's our goal, is for him to have a place to go after he's completed his training. But the Rise Center will also be dealing with housing, transportation, because, as Ms. King said, and others, that transportation is a huge problem. So we have to be able to get them to where they need to be. So Pathways is going to be a whole unique model with that itself. You might have seen them dressed up in stripes and everything. That has become a thing of the past, because if you dress like a convict, you're going to have the mindset of a convict. So that's why we're taking away the stripes. This is not to embarrass somebody or to show the community that this person has committed crime. The idea is to put them in a work uniform that they will have, and it's a Pathways uniform, that when they're out there working, they're just like anybody else, with the county or with the city. Those workers have uniforms they wear, the same concept with the folks that are going into Pathways. We're also about to start the vocational release program, and DOC has kind of led the way with this already. We were creating the space, but it's an old work release program where instead of you reporting to us and we put you to work manually, our first class is going to be the CDL license class out there in Lively, and they will stay with us at night. I mean, this is kind of a transition, because it's like when you go from detention or prison, it's a big transition to going back out onto the streets or where you're back in your community. So this is going to be kind of a transitional thing where they will be sentenced, obviously, through the courts, through our vocational program. They will go through the 5-week program at Lively with the CDL and TCC. And then at the end of that 5 weeks, pretty much everybody in that program is employed, and they usually have jobs. There are trucking companies that are looking for these folks. But when they're not in class, they're back with us. But they're not just back in our annex we have. They won't be back in the actual detention facility we have an annex in between the detention facility and the main office. That's where it'll become their home. And the idea of that during the week they have homework, they'll have some free time, but on the weekends we'll be doing life skill trainings, because a lot of these folks don't have checking accounts and driver's license and stuff like that. And when you start getting a paycheck, you got a place to put your check. So we got to teach these life skills to them too, because a lot of them have not experienced that. And I can go on and on. I know we don't have enough time to talk about it, but everything we do has a focus on reading. From our tablets that we just issued to every inmate here, it allows them to have phones and gives them something to do. But there are podcasts about mental health. There's podcasts about reentry efforts. There's a nationwide database for applications that they can actually fill an application out. With companies all over the United States that are looking for returning citizens to employ. So, massive amount of effort going on over here at the detention facility and the sheriff's office as a whole. Sheriff McNeil has gave us some focus and a point to move to, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I know we're running out of time, so I will just briefly pose this question to all of you. This was a question from one of our listeners, Jen B. And she asked, how can a family member help a loved one going to be released soon? And I'm going to expand the definition of family to include our community, because we are a family. So how about Ms. King, can you briefly answer, what can our loved ones and family members be doing to ease that transition?
Well, first, if the individual has been involved within a case management or pre-release services, I would recommend that they get involved with that person to help coordinate some of the things they may need. If that is not an option, a couple of things: take it slow. I mean, you're gonna have to take it slow. I mean, the expectations for a person coming home is very, very difficult for that individual, because they want to go to work. They want to have their family restored. They want to do the right thing, right? Because they've been told they're bad and horrible and all these other negative adjectives. So take it slow. It's not going to happen in one day. Reach out to people in the community to get community support. There's a lot of free resources where you can get counseling. I wish you could just call me. I'm just kidding. But yeah, just take it slow. That's the one thing. Take it slow. Listen to the person. Don't push too much. Don't ask too many questions. You may ask, how you doing? Do you want to talk about a little bit about what you've gone through? If they say no, stop, and then you pick it up another time. You're really going to have to use that spirit of discernment. Watch the body language. listen to them, and just go from there and take it one day at a time. And I do hope that your family member come home and does very, very well. Jen do.
Thank you. Mr. White, couple words. What would you say?
Great question. And actually, I didn't speak about it today, but Reentry Solutions Network, which I just recently founded, is basically built to address that question, to where we can actually connect people that are returning home or that their families, while they're incarcerated, to the resources. And you know, this community right here that is talking today, like Frida and Rob and Father Dustin and myself, any of us could be reached out to in this area right here, and we would happily refer you to the resources that you need or that we can help you find if you have questions like that. And I'm hoping they will give you our contact information after this, because any of us here, well, I know everybody, and I'm sure all of us would be happy to help.
Awesome. Assistant Sheriff, couple words.
I'd like to thank Good Shepherd Church for putting this symposium on, and this panel. There's a lot of experts on this panel, a lot of practical experience, and also experience with research and everything. I think it's awesome that we are all coming together. I think we all have the same goal. We're just taking different paths to get to that goal, which is good. I think we're covering the entire terrain. And I look forward to working with everybody on this panel and others as we move forward with the reentry efforts.
Awesome. Dr. Lockwood, any couple words that you would like to say regarding families and helping that transition period?
Yeah, I can't stress enough. Family support is really one of the most important easy things that can help an individual when they're transitioning back into the community. But it's this invisible kind of, nobody talks about it. They don't realize they're so focused on the individual that they forget that there's this ripple effect that happens when an individual is taken from the home, taken out of the community. And so having the family involved in the process that the individual is going through, if it's okay with the individual, that we are really engaging with them, letting the individual also process how they're feeling about this person coming home. I think we tend to forget that they have an impact also. And we do know that those individuals who have really strong family connections tend to experience the reentry process differently than those who do not, and that they're active in their lives. So I would strongly encourage individuals to understand that. And the last thing I'd like to also offer is this concept of we're so focused on providing reentry support as the individual transitions back into the community. And one of the things that our research is actually finding is that the individual, when they are transitioning back into the community, and I think we've all experienced, I got this, I know what to do, I've done this before, you know, and what ends up kind of coming out in a little bit of our research is that it's actually months down the road that's when they need the help. They realize, wait, this is not as easy as I thought it was going to be, or why can't I get that job, or why am I still having this problem? And so what we're finding is that the family and the community really needs to be there later on in the process, still be there at the beginning, totally understand. But we also need to realize that it doesn't happen overnight. I think we've all kind of made this comment, and just to realize and be there as supportive when they're ready.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Lockwood. And Mr. Hawkins, any final words from you?
Well, the main thing is that people coming out of prison or jail after being in for just a short period of time, 3 months, 6 months, 10 years, 20 years, whatever, there's fear that when they come out, there's fear of not being successful.
Absolutely.
And so what ends up happening is that, like Dr. Lockwood said, that it doesn't happen right away, because you come out, you have this bold, most of the time unrealistic expectations of what's going on. I go in, I don't just teach a Bible study. I go in there and teach practical application of God's word. And I tell them, I say, look, you're living at 30 miles an hour and life's happening at 90 miles an hour out here. And if you think that you're going to just walk out this door and everything's going to be hunky-dory. It's just not, that's unrealistic. And that goes with the family too. The family has to understand that that people that have been incarcerated for any length of time, they've grown apart from their families to some degree. And there's going to be some unrealistic expectations from the family as well. And those discrepancies or the separation, they have to be worked out, and both parties have to understand that, hey, you're not the same person that you were when all this stuff happened. One of the things is people have been talking about this driver's license. Let me tell you something. That is a major hurdle. That has to be addressed, I believe, at the legislative level, because people coming out of prison, they have to have a driver's license to get jobs, and you can't get a job without one. And there has to be some provision. So I think the community has to be aware that there's some expectations. Hey, you got to come out here and get a job. Well, if you don't give me the resources to get a job, like a driver's license, then that's an unrealistic expectation on that individual. And that pressure isn't going to show itself for the first 3 or 4 months. It's going to be after they've failed to get a job, and after they've pushed and pushed and pushed and done what they can do, then they get frustrated. That's when they're going to blow up, not when they first get out. What I usually do when I talk to people when they first get out, I say, hey, how are you doing today? They say, I'm doing great. I say, okay, I hope that's the way you feel 3 or 4 months down the road, because when everything is going or not going your way, then what is your default position? That's where having been connected with the community from the very beginning all the way through is going to bear fruit. Because that's where the person, if they're connected, they're going to say, hey, I have a different way of looking at this thing, rather than just saying, well, I'm just going to go back to doing what I used to do.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. And now, Father Dustin, I will turn it over to you for our concluding remarks and prayer. But thank you all for your insight, your passion, and your time for being here today.
Thank you too.
Thank you, Olivia. Thank you to the panelists. Also, just to say, I know that we were talking about different resources here locally for reentry. One is, and I think it appeared just a moment ago, Ann Meisensall and the crew over at Big Bend Area Reentry Coalition is a great resource for those that are reentering. So I would kind of add that to the list, the Big Bend Reentry Coalition. We are so appreciative that there are so many concerned citizens in our community for our sisters and brothers who are returning, that they may return safe, so that we can all be a bridge back into community for those that have been incarcerated in our state and in our community. And so let us pray. God of all peace, you are the Lord who sets captives free. You are the restorer of all the exiled. We ask, God, that you would help us to gather all that has been scattered, that you would teach us how to sow justice, mercy, and how to cultivate peace in our community. We pray that you, Lord, would inspire us to discover new pathways for your children as they re-enter back into society with us. May your peace be with us in the work that we all have to do before us. We pray all of this in your most sacred name. Amen.